Welcome to Cybersecurity from Scratch 101 Technical Foundations, Episode 9.1 SQL Injection with SQLMap. In this episode, we're going to talk about what SQLMap is, what the general tool workflow is, and give a little demo on it being used in practice. So SQLMap is essentially a tool that automates the discovery of SQL injection problems and the exploitation of websites. Blue and red teams can use it. Blue teams for testing their code in a more simplified manner, and red teams for an initial scan to see if different parameters are exploitable when they're doing their assessments. However, SQLMap is also a great way to cheat yourself out of learning skills. It's not a replacement for learning the skills that we talked about in the previous episode. Also, if you use it in the OSCP, you will fail, so don't do that. Now, really, the overall workflow is the same as when you're doing things manually. It's just really a heck of a lot faster. So if you're testing, for example, if a HTTP GET parameter is vulnerable, you would say SQLMap, and then you provide it the URL, and it will basically show you a dump of actual testing of the URL to see if it's vulnerable, just like if you were inserting a single quote manually. Or you could then, if you find out that it's exploitable, tell it to dump which databases are available with a --DBS flag. And if you find a database you like, you can enumerate the list of tables by saying which database and then which the tables that you want to dump. And then once that's done, you can dump the number of columns. And then from there, you can dump the content from specific columns from specific tables to get what you're looking for. Really the same thing as manually, just a lot faster. There's all sorts of useful options you can use when using the tool. For example, you can set your risk level. You can tell it to dump users and passwords directly. You can tell it to give a randomized user agent string to get around block lists, or you can specify a specific user agent string to use to get around, some particular whitelist protection that you might be aware of. It's a very flexible tool. There's also a --dump option, which will simply, dump the entire database or something if that's what you want to do. That's not the most readable thing in the world. Go for it, but it's kind of hard to parse. Really being a little more targeted in the data by enumerating tables and columns and targeting which specific data you want is kind of a better way of going about using the tool and getting the information you need. In this demo, we're going to use SQLMap to replicate the same database enumeration that we did in the previous episode, but do it in a fraction of the time and effort. So first, recall that we're testing this COD variable here to see if it's vulnerable. We're going to tell SQLMap to use a low risk posture and a random user agent string. It asks us if we want to use the server cookie. We say yes. And it generates automatically a payload very similar to what we did by hand. And we can see the Linux version, the web server version information, and the database version information as well. So now that we know that we can get in this way, we're going to look at the databases available. And we see the hotel database as well as the default databases here. So first we're going to see what tables are available in the hotel. And we can see not really anything interesting, it's just that room bit there. So we're going to ask for the database's usernames and passwords. So we found the DB admin at localhost. Now, the way this is doing it is because the system just knows that there's this users table in MySQL, and so instead of having to fish around by hand, it just goes right for it. We also ask for hashes, but we don't want to perform a crack at this time. And there, we have our hash. That was easy.